Flashy cars, fancy watches, huge homes, and endless fun. These are things that the world tells us we should strive for, but what happens if you get it? Let's say you win the lottery. You go and buy a new car right away. You buy a Rolex because, hey, it's only a small percentage of the amount that you won. You call a real estate agent and buy a new house. 3 years after winning the lottery, you go to spend money on your card and it gets declined. And you think, surely something must be wrong. I won the lottery. I have a ton of money. So you call your bank to find out why they blocked the transaction and have them release the hold, just to find out that you've spent all of your money. This might sound far-fetched, but this is a common story that's told time and time again. Now, to the outside world, these people look rich, but they're actually broke. The most insane statistic I've ever heard is that you are more likely to go bankrupt if you win the lottery. On a conservative estimate, over 30% of lottery winners will declare bankruptcy. This is compared to the average 10% of Americans who will declare bankruptcy in their lifetime, which is still insanely high. What's even worse is that this lottery system preys on poor people who have a dream of trying to be wealthy, and they do this by putting them in terrible situations and basically having a voluntary tax that poor people are paying. Next time you're at a grocery store, take a look at where they sell the lottery tickets. It's not by the organic food, it's by the place you buy bus passes. At least that's how it is in my city, and I'm betting it's like that in yours too. Let's look at these findings on lottery ticket buyers. Households making less than $12,400 per year spend roughly 5% of their total income on lottery tickets. If people in this category instead saved this up to $620, they could take a course that could help increase their income, or they could pay off debt, or if instead they invested this up to $620 a year, and they get an 8% rate of return starting at age 20, by the time they turn 65, they could turn that into roughly $285,090.84. Instead, it gets wasted away on the hope of a dream that's almost certainly not going to happen. In fact, you're more likely to die in a car accident on the way to buy a lottery ticket than you are to win the lottery. Are people even happier if they win? One of the more classic studies of this phenomenon show that winners averaged a 4 out of 5 in terms of happiness, as opposed to the control group, which averaged 3.82 out of 5. Okay, so people end up being a little bit happier if they win the lottery, but does that last? Well, lottery winners are shown to be less satisfied by positive mundane events, such as talking to their friends in their day-to-day lives. This change is related to what happiness experts call hedonic adaptation. Essentially, you just get used to the new life that you live, and you go back to your baseline level of happiness after the new, huge, exciting, or sad thing essentially wears off. Now, what if you don't just magically have a lot of money? Let's say you earn a really good income and make $100,000 a year, which would put you in the top percentage points of the world in terms of income. Well, over half of people making $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, let's say you make an absurd amount of money. Does this happen to them too? Well, let's look at this example from The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, a book that I recommend everybody read, where he looks at this example from Rihanna. Singer Rihanna nearly went bankrupt after overspending and sued her financial advisor. The advisor responded, was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend money on things, you end up with things and not the money? This is proof again that having a lot of money coming in does not mean that a lot of people are keeping it. In fact, people have a horrible habit of spending it right away. So how much do people think they need to be able to have the wealth that they want? People making over $50,000 a year think they need $157,000 to live comfortably. People making between $50,000 and $80,000 a year think they need $159,000. People making between $80,000 and $100,000 think they need $177,000. And people making over $100,000 think they need $246,000. We never stop to think enough is enough. We have to let go of this idea that we need more and more and more, but this is something that just happens time and time again. Take a look at this example of some car salesmen who are just asked about what type of car they drive and how much their payments are on them.
Asking people who work at Audi what their car payment is. In Montana, what car do you drive?
I have a 2021 Ram Rebel, a 2017 Audi S6, and a 2017 Corvette Z06.
And what's your car payments?
For the Rebel, it's $11.59 a month. The Audi's $901, and the Corvette Z06 $17.53 a month.
Good, Darren, what car do you drive?
I drive a 2019 Audi e-tron, and my payment is $788 a month.
These examples are extreme, but this is an incredibly common story. 8% of people making less than $100,000 a year own a luxury car, but the actually wealthy people are the ones that are less likely to do this. Ramsey Solutions did the biggest study on millionaires and found that the average millionaire drives a 4-year-old car with no payments. In fact, 61% of wealthy people actually drive Hondas and Toyotas and Fords. However, people quote-unquote stuck in bad financial situations do the worst thing. As soon as they end up paying off one car payment, they end up going around and taking a new one out right away. Instead of saving up and trying to trade in with extra cash to just get a new car a few years later and save a ton of money, we just go and take a new loan. This leaves the average auto loan debt in the US being $36,832, where most of these payments come close to what rent is in a lot of cities. What's even more absurd is we only spend 5.5% of our time in our cars on average, but we spend nearly as much on it as we do for our apartment or our house. We do the same thing in tons of other areas of our lives by putting it on credit cards. The average annual percentage rate on credit cards is 22.63%. And if you multiply this by the $1.13 trillion that Americans owe, that is about $256 billion that credit card companies will make on the interest alone. You might just be wondering, are we screwed? Are we stuck in a system that's going to keep us down? And no, you're not. It might be harder for a lot of people, but there's tons of things that you can do to break free from this horrible situation that leaves everybody being broke, not just the rich people or the people that look rich. We have to put aside our attempt to impress people with material goods. We often think the more things that we have, the happier that we'll be, even if that means putting us into debt. But having debt actually decreases that happiness, even more so than the material good gives. Happiness expert Arthur Brooks has found that the less debt you carry, the happier you will be. And if we can put aside our ego and live below our means, we will be happier. In The Psychology of Money, again, Morgan Housel states, saving money is the gap between your ego and your income. You might think you want an expensive car, a fancy watch, and a huge house, but I'm telling you, you don't. What you want is respect and admiration from other people, and you think having expensive stuff will bring it. It almost never does, especially from the people you want to respect and admire you. We also need to not assume that because somebody drives a $100,000 car that they're wealthy. In the same book, Morgan states, the only thing you know about people who drive a $100,000 car is that they have $100,000 less than they did before. Another way of shifting this mindset is realizing becoming a millionaire means you earned $1 million that you didn't spend. You might think having financial independence and this freedom is impossible, but the earlier you start, it is exponentially easier. Historically, the S&P 500, a stock market index that you can invest in, has averaged a 10% rate of return. This means on average it's historically doubled every 7.2 years. And think of how motivating that would be if every 7 years you go from 2,000 to 4,000 to 8,000 to 16,000 to 32,000, and then after 42 years you're up to $64,000. I would give every single dollar of mine to that investment if I could. Now, the stock market's not always this perfect up and up all the time. It's like using a yo-yo on an elevator where it's up and down in the short term, but up in the long term. Another huge reason to let go of this ego and having material goods is to have less stress. There's a point to be made for minimalism and simplicity in life, where if you know that the water heater goes out or you get in a fender bender or some random expense comes up, to have this extra margin and stress-free ability to just help cover these different costs, you will be dramatically happier. Again, as Arthur Brooks says, being debt-free will make you happier. If you let go of your ego, if you can spend less than you make, if you can drive a slightly older car, if you can live below your means, if you can start saving early, if you can continue investing, if you can build up an emergency fund, you can actually be rich and not just look rich.